morning and welcome to tonight's edition of The Probe. Tonight we are focusing on the Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill. Take note, there's no proper, there's no Ghanaian because of the report that was submitted to Parliament. We'll talk a bit more about it. The bill that saw a unanimous adoption by members of Parliament last week Wednesday. The bill is supposed to move to the consideration stage barring any hitches. And note, I say barring any hitches because of the litany of legal action so far against it, after which it will then go through the third reading before it is passed into law. Well, we'll get some more insight, education on what happens after the second reading, barring any hitches. But you know that this particular bill that most of you prefer to call anti-LGBTQ bill was at least consented to by all 275 MPs in Parliament, because when the Speaker mentioned that if anyone has anything against it, there was no hand up and there was no dissenting view on that. So that's what we know. And initially, it was a proper Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill in 2021, anti-gay bill, most people call it, and it criminalizes the promotion, the advocacy, funding, and acts of homosexuality in Ghana. That's what we know that this particular bill is hoping to look at in terms of legislation. Then we move on. It talks, according to groups arguing against the bill. Of course, we know that this bill has gone through a lot of mutations. There have been public hearings. There have been memos that have been received by this particular committee, the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs of Parliament. And those groups that argued against this particular bill, they say that it violates equality before the law. It affirms discrimination, violates freedom of expression, thoughts, conscience, and belief, and association. And all this, therefore, any attempt to criminalize such acts will be unconstitutional. And this is born out of the 1992 Constitution. They make references to Article 12, they make references to Article 21, amongst others. So these are the key arguments that were made against this particular bill. We know that there was an opinion also from the Attorney General. We'll take a look at it, the concerns that was raised. But as we speak, there's a major setback to this particular bill, even though it's gone through the second reading. First, there was a private citizen, a farmer in Kumasi, that filed a lawsuit against the Speaker of Parliament and the AG on this particular bill, asking that it alleges a breach of Ghana's constitution in relation to the handling of the Human Rights and Family Values Bill 2021. The citizen also argues that the bill was not accompanied by a fiscal impact analysis document when it was presented to Parliament. They cite the constitution, they are concerned about the Public Management Act, also Financial Management Act, I should say. These are issues that we'll be delving deeper into. Then in July 2021, we know that apart from that particular, legal action, there was a second one. This first one was filed in the High Court. Then the second one at the Supreme Court. There was a third one, which also was at the Supreme Court, an injunction suit that was filed asking Parliament not to proceed from where they were, even before the committee presented that report in Parliament. We are told there may be another one, which is a fourth one, in terms of a contempt of court that has been filed, we're told, just on the 7th of July. We'll be taking a look at it as well. But in July 2021, 8 members of Parliament introduced this particular bill. We know them. Leading it is Sam George. We have Roxanne Nelson, Dapamokbo, Helen Ntoso, amongst others, Bejra, amongst others, who formed this 8 members who actually proposed this bill. And they had human rights concerns raised by international organizations, and it criminalizes LGBTQ activities in Ghana. And it was actually triggered. You all will remember when we were told about a resource center that was going to be set up for LGBTQ activities in this country. Then we saw this particular 8 members coming out to actually put together this bill, a private members motion that was filed and then referred to the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament. So this is the situation when it comes to Africa. Top 10 countries, homosexuality tolerance rate in Africa. We have the list. First, we have Cape Verde, 80%, all the way to Benin with 22%. Then we continue with the top 10 countries that they actually abhor it. Yeah, if we could go to the next slide. So homosexuality tolerance rate in Africa, bottom 10 countries. Here we have Burkina Faso, Sierra Leone, Ghana with 7%, all the way to Gambia with 3%. We have the case of Uganda, which we'll be delving delving into as a case study in Africa, amongst others. Going on with the slides, so I was talking about the Ugandan case. U.S. sanctioned Uganda for anti-gay law, funds for programs withdrawn. That was earlier. We know that this is about the second time that Uganda is coming back with it. Military-sponsored aviation exercise was cancelled. Then later, Uganda court annulled the Anti-Homosexuality Act. But guess what? It came back. And we know the situation now. Now, in February 2024, anti-homosexuality bill became a law. And then in August 2024, court announced the law. 2024 in June, so June before August, U.S. imposes the sanctions. Then they annulled it. Then in March 2023, this is this year, the new bill on LGBTQ has become law. So that's the situation with Uganda. We know that the committee has also been to Hungary, they've been to France, they've been to a number of countries as part of their work. This is all on the table tonight here on The Probe. With me, my guests tonight, we have Kwame Enyimadu, who is the chairman of the Constitution, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament, joining us via Zoom. We'll also have in the studios Mr. Bernard Ahiafo. He's a ranking member on that committee. He's the Constitution, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. We'll also have Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante. He's Director of Advocacy for CDD. We know that they've also made some arguments against this particular bill. We'll take all those thoughts right after this break. Please do stay with me. We are live on the Joy News channel. We are on Joy 99.7 FM and affiliates across the country. We are on myjoyonline.com, all our social media platforms. Don't be passive, be active, and let's hear your questions as well. Tweet at us with the hashtag The Probe. I am Emefa Apau, and this is The Probe. Please do stay.
It's normal for me, it is false. There is a scientific determination of what is normal. And I'm saying that 1 to 3% of the population as homosexuals cannot be said to be normal because they fall outside the Gaussian distribution. Having said so, the other question is it mental illness or not? By definition, yes, it is mental illness. It is. And by the way, mental illness does not mean the person is gone naked on the streets. You could be mentally ill and yet very well dressed. So the fact that the person may be well dressed does not make the person normal or well. In fact, by definition, it is. And you go through how we define something as mental illness. We have a set of criteria for diagnosing mental illness. So if you hear somebody has depression, somebody has schizophrenia, the person satisfies these 5 criteria. In fact, the first 4 are mandatory. The 5th may or may not be there. So there must be a departure from the norm. Departure, that means it's abnormal from the Gaussian distribution I showed. That departure must be severe. That departure must be persistent. And it must cause pain or distress to the person or the society. So if I have a certain behavior that causes me pain, or causes pain or distress to the rest of the people, plus the 3 others, that by definition constitutes mental illness. And the 5th is that it may be associated with other abnormalities. It may, because it's not always so. There are some conditions that we call it circumscribed abnormality. That is still a mental illness. Now these days, if you put this argument, the degenerate science, and I say degenerate, will say, oh, but you've removed sexual perversion from the list of conditions. Just to satisfy an ideological stand, they have deliberately removed sexual perversion. So they'll look at all those things and say that once they remove homosexuality, that we say that we are removing from the list of abnormalities, it used to be in a class of conditions. And those things still remain. Pedophilia, a 60-year-old man decides that my interest in sex is to go for a 2-year-old girl, and not just once. That is my persistence. Pedophilia is abnormal. It's mental illness.
Thank you so much for joining us. This is The Probe here on the Joy News channel, also on Joy 99.7 FM. And I've introduced my guest, just in case you missed it. We have the chairman of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament, Mr. Kwame Enyim-Edoentwi. And gracing our studios tonight is Mr. Bernard Ahiafo, is the ranking member of the same committee. And also joining us via Zoom is Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante, with the CDD, Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement for the CDD. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome to The Probe.
And good evening to your cherished viewers and listeners.
Good evening, my friend.
Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Kojo, thank you so much also for joining us. At least we can hear you loud and clear. It's only appropriate, Mr. Ahiafo, that I start with Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante, whilst we also wait for Mr. Enyim-Edoentwi to join us. I'm sure you've been monitoring the process up until now. We know the number of legal actions that has hit this particular bill. I've seen the committee's report, 39 pages or so, that was presented to Parliament, where there was more like a unanimous adoption by members. But key issues that we know about is the issue about the financial implications and also the human rights concerns that has been raised. At least the AG had an opinion on this. We are told the committee says they have incorporated it. We'll take a look. But really, let me take your thoughts on the journey so far when it comes to this particular bill. At least proper is gone, Ghanaian is also gone in the title.
Well, those are really, thank you very much for the opportunity, and a very good evening to everybody and the MPs in your studio. But really, for me, this whole bill is a non-starter. It has been a non-starter for some of us, right from the beginning, because it's even the way the problem, the public policy challenge is presented in the memoranda is inconsistent, is confusing, it rides on emotions. So for a bill that seeks to basically imprison people for their sexual preferences and so on, to not be, for us not to be able to be disciplined in addressing or even framing what exactly the problem is, for me, it's a big issue. And right from that start, it then cascades into all manner of violations of the Constitution, because the proponents of the bill are so committed to in a way, let this behavior disappear from society by just imprisoning people, and somehow all those problems would have been solved. And I think you can see it in the excesses that they go through in terms of, prohibiting, anybody that would house somebody that is identified as a gay person. Or, even media cannot, even Parliament probably cannot even make statements on the floor of Parliament to say, oh, can we rethink this bill? Parliament has even injuncted its own self from trying to change this bill later in the future. And so I think the premise for this bill, as I said, there's a lot of emotion riding on it.
Okay, but you talk about emotions. Now, Dr. Asante, this 2014, your own Afrobarometer from CDD, I see it in the report, makes a showing in the reports that was presented to Parliament. It was used, and we know that 86% of Ghanaians, or those that you sampled, supports this particular legislation against same-sex, and then 11% disapproved of it. At least all these were incorporated. You're saying that it's still a non-starter, when indeed your own report points to the fact that many of us, or many Ghanaians, wanted this.
No, but what do they want? I don't know how many Ghanaians
legislation against same-sex. At least the CDD could answer that. You can tell us.
Yeah, sure. You can start. You can say but what is in the legislation, right? What exactly is in the legislation? So you can say that people don't agree with this sexual behavior.
Yeah.
All right. But then if you move from there to say that anybody who practices this, anybody who speaks or utter a word about gay or whatever should be in prison, or should be, they have a duty to report to the nearest police station. That's where, for me, this whole bill, because we haven't really allowed ourselves to think through what is really the problem and what is it that we are afraid of. I read the committee's report, which it talks about the justification, this protection of Ghanaian family values, which in essence is reduced to having a man and a woman in marriage, which is the sort of the foundation of our social structure. If that is all that we are talking about, then you can pass a legislation that says there will not be any same-sex marriage in Ghana ever, right? And you have solved your problem. So we haven't, as I said, if I read, so there's a lot of fear-mongering that goes on about, we are all going to become gay if we don't find a way of stopping this, right? And all our children are going to become gay, and that's how we have addressed this. But this is a serious issue where we are talking about, if this legislation passes, you are talking about people's brothers, sisters, whatever, being in prison because in their privacy of their home, two consenting adults decide that this is how they are going to engage in sex, right? That is what we are talking about. So if we haven't gotten the opportunity, and that's what I'm saying, I feel sad that, and particularly when even the proceedings in Parliament just recently in the second reading, I really felt sad the way we went about it. It was almost that if you dare say no, then we're going to get the public.
So you had concerns about the second reading. Are you saying, Dr. Asante, so you're talking about the second reading in Parliament and how it was conducted in the first place? Is that a concern you're raising?
Yeah, I'm even statements like all 275 members of Parliament support this. Well, there were, I think, close to maybe 100 MPs in there. And I don't even know if a quorum was satisfied. But there was this eagerness, there was this, yearning, this okay, the stage is set, and we need to get this thing done. But that's what I'm saying, it's missing the point. If we, as Ghanaians, and for me, and we can go, we don't have to get into all the medical, the literature, and the arguments about whether this is nurture or nature, and all of these kinds of things. But what I know is that this people of these kinds, I lived in Adabraka for many years, and I knew Kojo Bessie, all these things that were there. So it's not that this is something new. But if we think that this is an issue now, I think the way we've gone about this is completely wrong. And whatever we are pushing, I don't think that it would resolve our problem, because I don't think we have even understood the nature of the problem that we claim we have.
Okay. Well, the ranking member is in the studio. Kojo, let me bring in the ranking member of the committee. Kojo, let me just bring in the ranking member of the committee as well, and also the chairman. At least they worked extensively on this particular bill that we've raised concerns about. Sure. So, Ms. Ahiafo, looking at this particular, I have the memorandum and then the report that was presented by your chairman on Wednesday. A careful clause-by-clause analysis of the original one and the committee's report. It appears that very little has changed, and it raises the concerns about why then do you take the pains of going and taking all views on this, yet it doesn't look like it reflects.
Well, Amafa, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and let me seize the opportunity to say a very good evening to the people of Akachi South constituency. When this bill was introduced, in line with the best legislative practice, we advertised the bill. The bill became so popular, so sensational, and we received close to 200 memoranda. And as a committee, we have to sit down, look at the memo, give hearing to civil society organizations.
You had 9 public hearings.
Yes, and Kojo Asante was one of the people that the committee listened to, coming from CDD, the traditional authorities, the Christian Council, the Muslim Mission, the National Chief Imam, the Catholic Bishop Conference, individuals. They came with their presentation, and the committee will have to listen to the pros and cons, and then resolve to a committee's clause-by-clause consideration of the bill. Now, you rightly indicated that the bill will be passed into law without having a promotion in the proper in the bill. Why? The reason is that the use of the word proper is subjective. So in the wisdom of the committee, there is no need to using the word proper. So that is what the committee is supposed to do. But the memoranda that the committee has received, the overwhelming majority are in favor of the passage of the bill.
Okay.
It's only very few.
Out of the 200 memos,
yes, very,
off the top of your head, would you say?
Well,
would you be able
I wouldn't
to say
be
how
able
many
to
were
give
just
the statistics, but more than 80-85% are in favor of the passage of the bill.
Okay.
Really, very few who were against the bill, including the LGBTQ community, which will have to listen to them off camera.
Okay.
And we did all those things in order to take their views. We also put down the Constitution, and we have looked at the bill as against the constitutional imperatives, and anything that will be inconsistent if the bill is passed into law to the 1992 Constitution. The proposal of the committee is that it should be deleted. We've also advented our mind to Section 104 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act, which was with us since 1960 till today, which prescribe unnatural carnal knowledge, including homosexuality. However, by definition, there must be an element of penetration. So it doesn't, in a way, cover lesbianism, because there cannot be a penetration. But this particular bill is also seeking to prescribe the activities of lesbianism. Well, the committee has looked at it to make various proposals. It is now subject to the entire 275 members of parliament, the entire country for that matter, to look at the proposal made by the committee. Any member of parliament can also propose amendment to the bill. He will be given the opportunity to move his amendment, and when the House is convinced, when Ghana is convinced, then the amendment will be carried out. Okay. So it is not yet passed into law. Okay. So my difficulty is the argument that they are making now, that the bill is unconstitutional. I know a law is supposed to be unconstitutional because the Constitution clearly spelled that any law, you know, the Constitution is the fundamental law of the land, the highest law above and beyond which no federal law exists. And any law that is inconsistent to the Constitution, to the extent of the inconsistency, is null and void. The language of the Constitution is law. So if a bill is introduced and there is an element in the bill that Parliament feels that will be inconsistent to the provision of the Constitution, if passed into law, then there will be a proposal that particular provision be deleted. Okay. So the argument that people are making now regarding certain provisions of the bill, particularly those that the committee is proposing, that it should be amended or deleted, I do not see the argument, because the bill is in the process of becoming law. After the bill has become law, then we now have law. And if they feel that any provision of that particular law is inconsistent with the Constitution, then they can go to the Supreme Court for interpretation. So if, for instance, Parliament is saying provision A of the bill will conflict provision C of the Constitution, and to the extent of that conflict, we cannot allow the provision to pass the way it is because of the constitutional imperative, then you must give Parliament the opportunity to do its work. And if the law is passed, then you can go to court and seek for an interpretation.
This thing about always saying go to court, because
bill,
that's why the committee is.
Yes, they are already called for me prematurely.
Committee
yes.
to cure all this rather
yes.
than waiting to finish and say that go to court.
As a committee responsible for constitutional, legal, and parliamentary affairs, a bill has been introduced to you.
We've had opinions from the AG,
yes,
for instance.
Yes.
It appears that was not even incorporated.
When the AG came before us, he looked at the proposed amendment to the bill by the committee. He concluded that if he had seen the proposal made by the committee to the bill beforehand, he wouldn't even be appearing before us, because his concerns about the bill had been taken care of by the committee.
Okay.
So that is what the committee is supposed to do.
Okay.
So our proposal, if you look at the report that we have tabled in Parliament, which was taken during the second reading, we have attached proposed amendments to the bill, and that is the work of the committee.
Okay. Well, Mr. Yumadu joins us via Zoom. Thank you so much once again for your time. So, given the litany of cases, let's clear this particular legal actions that has hit the committee's work, at least this particular bill. We know that there's one other High Court, there's a Supreme Court one, there's one also other Supreme Court, there's an injunction against the proceedings in particular. We are told there's a contempt of court one also that has been filed just this July, on the 7th of July, I'm told. But the last we spoke, you mentioned that the committee, as the committee chair, you were unaware of this, but really we know now that the Speaker is aware of this. So given the number of cases, particularly this particular injunction that we talk about, would Parliament not be breaching the Constitution if you were to further go ahead with this particular bill?
Good evening, MFA, and good evening to your cherished listeners and viewers. I'm sorry that I couldn't be at the studio because I'm at the constituency, and I don't plan to be in Accra until Tuesday morning. I'm very sorry. This question is a very difficult question for me. Maybe my brother had been fortunate. He answers that aspect. Maybe he has been fortunate to have a look at the rate that you talk about. But in all honesty, I haven't, had a look at it. I haven't seen the rate that had been issued against Parliament. Unfortunately, I do not know if the Speaker had been served. So it's very difficult for me to respond to the court processes.
So from what I know, the Speaker has been served, duly served, from what I know. At least it was filed in May. Okay. The Speaker was served in June. That was the very first one. Also, we know that the injunction one, the other one in June, the Speaker was served on the 16th of June. There's the injunction one, 26th of June. The Speaker was served on the 27th. It's only the contempt one that we are told that the Speaker is yet to be served. But at least you are a lawyer, considering that there's an injunction filed against this particular process. What were you to advise? You are the chairman of the committee.
Someone is citing the Speaker for contempt?
We are told. That's in the offing. Is that what I heard? In the offing, that's what we are told.
I'll be very surprised because I know the courts under normal circumstances wouldn't want to interfere with the proceedings in Parliament.
But Parliament is not above the law, are you?
Yes, I do. And I quite remember during the Honorable Do Ajaho's time, there was a matter that was before the court. And Honorable Do Ajaho ruled that Parliament would not go in there. But this particular instance, we have a constitutional interpretation. So if someone is seeking an interpretation of the Constitution, if Parliament errs, I am sure the court would always say that the Parliament erred. And then you can go and set aside what Parliament had done wrong. And I think that was what my colleague, the ranking member, stated, that if something is gone wrong. But I would be surprised that contempt would be against the Speaker for doing his duties as the Speaker of Parliament.
So,
I'll be surprised.
As a lawyer and the chairman of the committee, and now you're aware, at least, you say you have not cited this particular rates or suits, for instance, but considering that we have an injunction case, injunction filed and duly served, you were to advise, are you saying that will still proceed as you have planned?
Well, I unfortunately, I'm not a speaker, and if it's been served on the speaker will direct us if a decision. Fortunately, the speaker is a lawyer. Mm-hmm. So, and apart from he being a lawyer, he would have a lot of lawyers at his secretariat to advise him. And if it's before the court, we would be very careful not to delve into, we will not descend into the arena of something that is before the court. That's why I'm very careful, especially when I haven't cited the rate, on what to say on a rate that had been issued, what are the remedies, and what not that the person is seeking. So if you would allow me, I wouldn't want to go into that area.
Okay.
Because it would only be speculative.
Okay, so as we speak, are you surprised by the impediments, so to speak, that has been put in the way of this particular bill we are talking about?
So far as the committee is concerned, so far as myself, the ranking member, and other members of the committee are concerned, we haven't had any impediments. And nobody had instructed us that there is something that stops us from doing our statutory or legal duties.
Then how do you explain how the committee raises some significant issues with the bill, especially in relation to the Constitution and the issue about the fiscal impact analysis? I see the number of documents that you refer to as a committee. You cited the Constitution, Standing Orders, Criminal Offences Act. I do not see anything about the Financial Management Act, because this is one of the key things that comes up in terms of the finances. So how then do you still recommend that it is passed? How so? Explain to us.
We have referred to the documents that we need to refer to. This is a human institution. Mm-hmm. If there is something that we have not done, we could correct ourselves if we have done anything wrong. But so far as I'm concerned, well, I think we have satisfied all the issues.
Well, but really, this financial issues, I'm sure Mr. Ahiafo will also help you on this, because it's one of the key things that was raised in at least all the cases. I've seen the 108, at least, that you also cited in your document, but at least we've seen the Public and Financial Management Act also, which I've been talking about the fact that you did not cite.
You see,
but how do we deal with that?
I believe strongly they are talking about Article 108 of the 1992 Constitution, as well as Section 100 of the Public Financial Management Act. We have to go and look at the wordings of Article 108 of the 1992 Constitution, as well as the Public Financial Management Act. You see, if you look at this private members' bill under reference, it has not made any provision or that will constitute a charge on the consolidated fund.
Okay.
It is not imposing a charge. You see.
But they're talking about the implications.
You see,
it may not be
the law,
but how about
the law is not talking about implication.
Okay.
You see, if you look at Makokwe's ruling on this particular issue, you see the view that even the order paper is purchased by state money. Therefore, if you bring a private member's bill, it will be printed on the order paper. Therefore, it have a financial implications, a cost. That is not what is meant by Article 108.
Your public hearings,
members of parliament are paid. Members of parliament are paid by a consolidated fund. But that is not, and that cannot amount to the bill making provision for imposition of a tax or affecting a consolidated fund. So if such being the case, then there cannot be a private member's bill in Ghana. Because tell me a bill that you introduce, that a committee will not sit down and do a clause-by-clause consideration, that a committee will not give, advertise, and then listen to the people who will be submitting a memo. You understand? That will not end up in the order paper. That will not be debated on the floor of Parliament. So if you are getting it out of context that all these things constitute cost, therefore it has a financial implication, then you are getting the meaning of Article 108 very wrong.
Okay.
And the wrong impression will let you behave the way you are behaving.
Because it's not
I am
about
happy.
implications.
Yes,
Really
I am happy that this particular issue is before a court of competent jurisdiction for interpretation. Okay. And I believe strongly they will give it appropriate interpretation having regard to the extenuating circumstances.
Well,
so I must be careful not to comment on the matter sub judice
at least you
once
are
in
aware
view of the fact that it is in court.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I've not been served with any court process.
Okay.
You understand? So they are talking about contempt. I'm just surprised that.
But were you happy,
this
Mr.
issue
Nyanfo, were you happy with the way the conduct that day? At least there have been concerns raised about how the speaker went about at least the second reading and asking for members and their inputs. That if there's anyone who has anything against it, should raise their hand.
You see,
make
look,
it look
look
like
at it
if
this
you raise
way.
any dissent.
When we started the debate, the motion was moved by Honorable Bajira and was seconded by Honorable Ntim Fojo. Then chairman of the committee presented the report. Then I contributed to the report. And then Andy Apiakobi also contributed to the report. And so far, 2 people from the majority side have spoken, 2 from the minority side has also spoken, and they are all speaking the same language. Then at that point, Speaker wants to find out whether there is somebody who may want to speak against, because you have a position at variance to what is on the floor. Such a person can be given a hearing so that he will also make his point. So asking whether there is anybody who is against the position that they are speaking against. What is the offense in this? We are in this room. 3 of us are in this room. 2 of you have spoken. You are towing the same line.
At least if we allow the process to run its natural course, then people can raise dissenting views. But if you impose on them that you need a dissenting view,
you are not.
Then it
you are not
makes it a bit intimidating.
Let's say if you are sitting in Parliament, 275, and 4 have spoken. In fact, that was not the only business before the House.
Okay.
So sometimes, by consensus, if two people here are speaking the same language, then the speaker will be able to get the sense of the House. So having realized the sense of the House, you are going to put a question. But at the point of putting the question, having regard to the nature of this particular bill, Speaker is not wrong asking, is there anybody
who has a different
view before putting the question? So how could this be an intimidation?
Okay. Dr. Kojobu-Santi, at least the MPs do not agree that there was some form of intimidation during the debate. But really, I would want to find out from you, at least, do you get the sense that the ordinary person, because you mentioned that this particular bill, I've heard people say, is really a much ado about nothing, considering that we have existing laws in the country to cure some of these things that we are seeking to cure. Really, I look at page 6, at least, of this particular report. And for me, they say that the overall purpose of the initiative is to strengthen Ghanaian laws by removing ambiguities. Do you get the sense that this particular report actually removes the ambiguities that they talk about? Do people even understand this particular bill or law that we are seeking to legislate?
I mean, actually, to the contrary, the kind of I think it's very broad, the broadness of some of these provisions. And I would even struggle to see how you even prosecuted it in court. But in this pursuit, as I said, in this pursuit of really not appreciating or framing what exactly the problem is, we have gone in the proposals that have been made, we have gone to actually discriminate between same-sex sexual activity that is unnatural and heterosexual activity that is unnatural. So now in this bill, because it says anybody that holds themselves out or engages in same-sex sexual activity commits an offense. If heterosexual couple engages in that unnatural activity, they will not be covered by this bill. Right? So this whole idea of now even criminalizing persons, human beings, so that if I walk in there and somebody sees me and says, I look like a gay person, you hold yourself out as a gay person. Remember, even when this bill started, all of a sudden, even people who look feminine or walked in a way were being stigmatized as being gay, and therefore could be abused and all of that kind of stuff. It's gone so far off the rails. The way this bill is, and I was interested to see that some of these things will be cured in the report of the committee, and I didn't really get a sense that these things were being taken, really seriously. The 108, the committee says, well, it has resolved the matter, the AG has made its input, and so on. If it was just a question of the AG and the committee sitting behind closed doors and resolving the matter, if that is what Article 108 demands, then really, why do we have an elaborate provision that makes an exception, a private member's bill, an exception to the rule? So I think that, for me, these are all testing. These are precedents that we have to interrogate, because it's happening in this case, right? But other cases will come. And if resolving 108 is just a matter of either the speaker accepting that the committee has done it, or the committee making the case that it has made the Attorney General without actually showing that it has no financial impact, then it's very, very simple. But let me make a substantive point. In this constitution, we have a very delicate system for resolving a conflict of rights. Right? If your activity or asserting your right harms somebody else, then we have to find a way to limit your right so that the person is not harmed. We are saying that because both for our religion, both for our culture, both for our proper family values, we are going to limit we are not going to follow that constitutional mechanism model. But because the majority of citizens want it, we are going to impose this limitation on your right. And it's not just.
But that's a bit simplistic, isn't it? That's a bit simplistic, Dr. Kojo Pomponi Asante.
Well, I'm not. Forgive me if you, in the way I've articulated, you think I am simplifying. But I'm giving you an example. When we've had the girl in school, the Muslim girl, the Wesley girls who couldn't, the hijab issue, who wanted to fast, all right, okay. Now it says, well, this is a Christian school, and therefore we insist that you cannot do this here, or the Rastafarian or whatever it is. Now the resolving that right was all about harm. What kind of harm is being caused? Right? That is the way you resolve that right. Because if you don't do it that way, and you go by other kinds of measures and sentiments about how we feel and so on, we are going to get into a problem. Because as for conflict of rights in the society, if society is involved, all kinds of things. if you don't keep the sanctity of the mechanism in place, you are going to get to a place where you hit a rock.
Okay.
And I think that we are not paying closer attention to these things as we are, focusing on.
I'll come to you, Dr. Anyafo, Mr. Anyafo. But let me go to Mr. Enyimadu on this, because I've been asking about this strengthening of Ghanaian laws that we talk about, at least in this particular report, and resolving all the ambiguities in there. And I'm wondering how this new report that at least you put out there, the current bill in its form, how does this address this particular ambiguities that you talk about, Ms. Enyimadu? Help enlighten us.
Right. First of all, you talk about Article 108. And I am glad that if the matter is indeed in court, I think this is belated, because earlier on, I spoke about this, and I have not agreed with my ranking member on this. He takes the view that there is no charge on the consolidated fund. I take the view that there is a charge on the consolidated fund.
Because of the wording, really, it's not about implication, is it? Because the wording
it's a matter of interpretation. It's a matter of interpretation.
Is it?
But it came before Parliament, and the ruling of the Speaker was that there is no charge on the consolidated fund. So that's why I said that it is probably a little bit belated. But it traveled for us to come this far. Already, between myself and the ranking member, Parliament has spent a lot on this bill because Ghanaians want it. So I'm glad that, and as my ranking member said, we don't have to split hairs on this. If it is before the highest court of the land, we would be happy that this is decided. The second thing I want to talk about is what my ranking member said, that two during the debate, two on the right, two on the left. I would not blame the Speaker, because as one of the things that Honorable Andy Appiah-Kubi said, he said that he was of the view that all members of Parliament will support this bill. And then the committee also presented a report that was unanimous. In the report, now what Dr. Ni has said, in the report, I read what those who support the bill have said. I also, those who didn't support the bill, their reasons. I adduced everything to the public. Then we came to unanimous decision that by consensus, this is what the committee is presenting. So based on that, the Speaker then said that, is there anybody, contrary to what had been said, that the committee thinks we are unanimous? And then the Honorable Andy Appiah-Kubi has also said that no member of Parliament was going to speak against it. He is given the opportunity to...
But by saying that, by making such a comment, then how do you expect any other MP to come up and say anything against it? Because if you maintain from the very onset that nobody has anything against it, that's not an environment that is conducive for anyone raising a contrary view, is it?
It is not... I'll say it is not conducive because now any person that would want to be objective on the bill is attacked. The other time when we were reading the second reading, Honorable Aslausu said, amongst other things, that when we are talking about unnatural carnal knowledge, if there is a person who is a heterogeneous in society, but a person would want to use the wrong way if the person is having an affair with the wife, that is unnatural carnal knowledge. If somebody is going to kiss another person, that is unnatural carnal knowledge. And right at the chamber, she was being attacked. So the people that are for this wouldn't want to hear any contrary view. That is it. And the press, I always say the press. You back such people.
What did the press do?
Isolated. The press, every press man is interested in this bill that it be passed.
Your challenge, if you choose to accept it, is this.
Let's go! Let's go!
Show up on day 1, work out with us for 30 minutes, feel good right away.
Yo!
Repeat 5 days a week for 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
5 workouts a week.
We're Body, and we call that a body block.
You pick the block and you're going to love the experience.
On week 4, this part is really important. Take the week off. Seriously, we mean it. Rest. Go on vacation. Or try something new. Maybe some yoga.
Notice you're not holding on to any tension here.
Or a dance class.
Get sexy with it, daddy.
You do you. And then start again.
Be committed to this process.
Choose a new body block each month. Get a new challenge each month. Have fun every day. Avoid burnout.
You're not going to quit on yourself today.
This is how you reach your goals. You in?
There is nothing that we can't do if we work together.
Sign up for your first body block today. Visit body.com for a free trial. That's BODI.com.
Are you ready to get started?
I don't think you would deny this.
Interested in it being passed,
Every
you say?
freshman-
I disagree with you on that respectfully, sir. You cannot make such a general statement that every pressed man is interested in getting this particular bill passed. With all due respect, I disagree with you.
I haven't seen, okay, let me put this way. That I have not seen any press money yet who is going to speak against this bill. Nobody has done that yet. Nobody. No one. So if
And it doesn't prevent us from asking questions about it.
Oh, yes, you have the right. But any person that says that this bill, this particular clause, I would want to see it this way, or I am giving a suggestion, that person is attacked by the
But I've asked you how your current report cures the ambiguities that you talk about that exist in our Ghanaian laws. I'm here to hear how it cures it.
Ambiguity?
You mentioned in your own
ambiguities are you
report.
talking
You
about?
mentioned in your own report that you are hoping that the overall purpose of this initiative is to strengthen Ghanaian laws by removing ambiguities. And I'm wondering how your current report cures the ambiguities that you talk about.
Well, when it comes to this particular bill, an issue was raised, and this had been raised by my ranking member. I, for instance, said at the committee meeting that Section 104.2 was enough so far as this bill is concerned. But I was pointed out that, look, Section 104.2 is talking about unnatural carnal knowledge, and so far, male to male, you can prove, because the court has said there must be the least penetration, and you could prove that. But if it's about 2 ladies, how are you going to prove that? And therefore, there was a lacuna that we needed to deal with. That's why we deliberated on the bill, and then the result is what we've presented.
Okay. Well, let me not leave out the audience on this. There are a number of questions that they sent in. So let's go through a few before then, briefly.
You see, if you look at the provision on unnatural carnal knowledge, you must establish a least amount of penetration of unnatural carnal knowledge. Now, they keep on arguing that this particular bill discriminates. How does it discriminate? Mr. Santi, if your wife should go and report you to the police that instead of having natural carnal knowledge, you are going a natural way, you will come under Section 104. So how does it discriminate against male and male-female? So I find it very difficult to understand the discrimination argument. And each time they argue discrimination, it gives me much interest as how a lecture in metaphysics will give to a newborn baby. MFA, you have a right to engage in natural carnal knowledge. Anybody who have a natural carnal knowledge is committing a crime, whether the person is your husband, whether the person is my wife. No, for every crime, for instance, MFA, if your husband has stolen your money and you don't go to report, would it be a subject matter of prosecution? It's the same thing that we are talking about here.
Okay.
You understand? But if an outsider comes to pick your money, definitely you will be shouting, my money, my money, my money.
Okay.
The bill doesn't discriminate against anybody. The bill proscribes same-sex marriage, homosexuality. the lesbianism, the transgender, all the LGBTQ acronyms, the initialism.
Let's take a few.
That is what the bill is seeking to prosecute. It doesn't discriminate against anybody.
Let's just run through them so that what we have not touched on, we can speak on briefly. What specific steps has the committee taken to ensure a balanced approach that respects human rights while addressing societal considerations? Lovia sends that. How would you describe the overall reception and public sentiment towards the bill? Sophia is asking, what significant points of debate and discussion have emerged during the committee's deliberations on the bill? Hashim says. And then Elon says, has there been any amendment or revisions made to the bill during the committee's review process? At least they've been talking about that. Lizzie says, what are the potential implications and effects of this bill on the LGBT community and society as a whole? Carter says, can you share any insights into the perspectives and concerns raised by different stakeholders during the committee sessions? Local, how does the committee plan to engage with the voices and opinions of individuals from the LGBT community and organizations advocating? Kweku says, what is the anticipated timeline and next steps for the bill in terms of further legislative proceedings? At least that we have not spoken about. We can get the views on this. Maybe you can start with you in the studios.
Yes.
Mr. Hiafo, what then happens? Barring any last-minute hitches, both of you say you are not aware about this particular rate just yet, but at least it exists. But if that is out of the way, what happens? Second reading has been done.
Well, second reading has been done, and the process of the legislative work in Parliament is guided by Article 106 of the 1992 Constitution, introduction of the bill, second reading of the bill. Then from second reading, it moves to a consideration stage. So at consideration stage, the committee will table its proposed amendment. Any member of Parliament can also propose amendment to the bill. And at that stage, we look at it clause by clause, word by word, sentence by sentence. For every clause, that is what we do until we get to the end of the bill. Then we come to the long title. Then after consideration, if there is the need for a bill to be taken through a second consideration, before the motion for a third reading, a member will rise to address the motion for third reading, and then seek the leave of the Speaker to take the bill through the second consideration. Then after the entire consideration of the bill, it then moves to a third reading stage, and then it is passed. Then as soon as the bill is passed, it's then given to the President for the royal assent. The President has 7 days within which to assent to the bill or refuse to assent to the bill. And if the President decides not to assent to the bill, then he has 14 days to let the bill come back to Parliament with explanation as to why the President is unable to assent to the bill.
Let's bring
so
in
the stage
the
that
chairman.
we are now, the Business Committee will have to program the bill for a consideration.
Okay. Mr. Kwame Enyimadu, well, the question that you always hear, at least you've been hearing since this particular bill started in 2021, are you hopeful that this particular bill will be passed in this particular meeting or session, I should say?
Oh, this meeting, I'm not very sure. Why I'm not sure was that we held a meeting with the Honorable, the Right Honorable Speaker. That's my ranking member and myself. And religious organizations, in order to avoid a charge on the consolidated fund, the religious bodies have health facilities, and they are proposing to give us to make their health facilities available.
So that's for the victims. The bit about the victims getting help, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. So we have to decide on whether we could legislate on this. We've considered it before. So the Speaker might refer the bill to the committee for us to fine-tune it and then report back to the plenary before we could proceed to do the consideration. We have number of amendments that we have proposed. And these amendments are to be considered by the entire House. And that's what we call consideration stage. To consider our various amendments, they would also come in what we have probably suggested to delete or add if it sits right with them or it doesn't. We'll decide this, and at the end of it, it becomes. So it's not likely that this meeting, we have about 3 weeks to go on recess. So I doubt if this 3 weeks we could pass.
Okay. Dr. Kojo Pumpuni-Asante, please let me give you just 30 seconds to wrap up on this. I'll give you the final word. 30 seconds, please.
I am so concerned. I mean, even when I hear about health facilities and so on. I mean, you see, it's counterintuitive. Why do we think that somebody who knows the stigma, the abuse, people's families, people have been chucked out of their houses, their families have disowned them, why would anybody choose that sexual preference?
But it's not just for those who are doing it. It's also for those who are falling victim. At least those that such acts have been perpetrated on them to get help. That's what the report talks about.
Wait, please. The people who are described as victims is anybody that basically, supposedly choose this lifestyle and basically have come to a realization that is an anomaly, and they need
from the Sunday pitches
by the people who seek to imprison other people.
Okay.
I really think
Doc, we'll get to interact further on this. Unfortunately, I have to end it here, Doc. Unfortunately, my time is really up. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being a part of the show. I had the chairman, the ranking Constitution and Legal Affairs, also had Dr. Kojo Pumpuni-Asante, CDD. This has been The Probe. For radio audience, we have a Walk of Jesus. I am MFA Pau. Thanks for your company.